Most people heard about the air raid sirens in Bahrain today, but there's a detail underneath the headlines nobody's really explaining. And it's the one thing that tells you this isn't just another strike. Before I get into it, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from today. I actually go through them. And if you want to keep hearing the parts the networks skip, go ahead and subscribe. So let's talk about what happened in the Gulf. Because what we saw today isn't a simple attack. It's a message. A very deliberate, very loud message. Air raid sirens went off in Bahrain today. Not once, multiple times. People were told to head to shelters, to stay away from windows. And somewhere in the middle of all that panic, Iran's Revolutionary Guard made a claim. They said they destroyed the control center for U.S. unmanned boats. They said they hit fuel depots. They said they took out radar systems. Now, ask yourself something. Why would they say that? Why would they put out a press release about hitting a specific building controlling uncrewed boats? Because they're not just trying to blow things up. They're trying to prove a point. They're telling the United States, we know where your stuff is, we know how to hit it, and we are not afraid to do it. Let me break down what we know for sure. The Pentagon hasn't confirmed all of this. We need to be clear about that. Some of what Iran is saying is coming through their state media. But what we do know is that air raid sirens were triggered in Bahrain. We know the EU Aviation Safety Agency told airlines to avoid the airspace over Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, the UAE, and parts of the Gulf of Oman. That's not nothing. They don't do that for fun. That means the people whose job it is to keep planes from getting shot down believe the risk is real. The situation escalated incredibly fast. You might remember that just a short time ago, things were actually looking maybe not good, but better. There was a memorandum of understanding between the U.S. and Iran, brokered by Pakistan. It was fragile, but it existed. People were cautiously hopeful. Then President Trump said that memorandum was over, and everything went off the rails. It's almost like someone turned the pressure knob all the way to the right. We've seen U.S. strikes on Iran, 3 nights of them, according to reports. CENTCOM said they were hitting coastal defense systems, missile sites, drone capabilities. In response, the IRGC went after U.S. bases in Bahrain, in Jordan, in Kuwait. And now, here we are. But I want you to focus on that specific detail, the control center for unmanned boats. Why does that matter more than a fuel depot or a radar? Let me explain the significance. This is audio only, so I need you to imagine this. The United States Navy relies heavily on unmanned systems in the Gulf. It's a way to project power without putting sailors in harm's way. You have these uncrewed surface vessels, these drone boats, patrolling the waters. They're the eyes and ears of the fleet. They can be weaponized too. This isn't science fiction. It's the way modern navies operate. They're guided from control centers. There's a building somewhere. It has computers, communications gear, satellite links. The people sitting there aren't holding rifles. They're holding joysticks and keyboards. And today, Iran claimed they destroyed that building. If that's true, think about what it means. It means Iran has the intelligence. They knew where the building was. They knew what it did. And they had the capability to hit it, even with U.S. air defenses in the area. This is a huge flex. A way for them to say, we're not just shooting rockets into the desert, we're surgically taking apart your ability to control this waterway. It's also a message to the other countries in the region: Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, the UAE. They're watching. They're all hosting U.S. bases or their close allies. The IRGC is looking them in the eye and saying, you see those American forces on your soil? We can reach them. We can hurt them. And that protection you're counting on, maybe it's not as solid as you think. Now let's rewind a little bit, because this didn't happen in a vacuum. It's the end result of something that's been building for a long time. And I want to walk you through the background, because understanding the history is the only way to see where we're headed. For months, there have been tensions over the Strait of Hormuz. You know, that little choke point at the mouth of the Persian Gulf. Roughly 20% of the world's oil passes through there. It's not just important, it's critical. Iran has been making life difficult for shipping. They've been stopping tankers. They've been demanding that ships follow rules set by Iran, not by international law. Then you had the attacks on commercial vessels, both sides pointing fingers, and it all kept escalating. In the background, President Trump was making comments, tough guy stuff. We're going to hit them hard. You could practically hear the caps lock. A couple of weeks ago, things looked like they might be cooling off. That memorandum of understanding was a step back from the brink. But now that step is gone, and both sides are just letting it fly. Look, I'm not a military strategist, but anyone can see this is a dangerous game. You have the United States, which just concluded 5 hours of strikes against Iranian targets. That's not a pinprick, that's a major operation. And then you have Iran responding with attacks on multiple countries. They're not just fighting in one spot, they're hitting in Bahrain, in Jordan, in Kuwait. They're widening the front. And while all this is happening, you have Iran announcing that the Strait of Hormuz is closed until further notice, until the end of America's evils. It's almost like they're daring the U.S. to come and open it, to send warships through a gauntlet of missiles and mines. It's a knife fight in a phone booth. Any miscalculation could be catastrophic. Just think about what that means. If the strait is closed, the world's oil supply gets choked off. Prices could go through the roof. You'd feel it at the gas pump. Your grocery bill goes up. Inflation gets worse. This isn't just about soldiers and bases. It's about your life, the cost of living, the stability of the global economy. Maybe that's what Iran wants. Maybe they think if they make the U.S. hurt economically, they'll pressure the administration to back off. Maybe they think the U.S. public won't tolerate a war that makes their wallets thinner. The European Union Aviation Safety Agency, EASA, didn't just issue a friendly suggestion. They issued a conflict zone information bulletin. That's the kind of document you issue when you're genuinely terrified a commercial airliner is going to get shot down. You remember what happened to that Malaysian Airlines flight over Ukraine. Yeah, that's what they're trying to prevent. They're telling airlines, don't fly over these countries. Don't fly over the Gulf of Oman. We cannot guarantee your safety. And think about the passengers. You're sitting on a plane, maybe going from London to Dubai, and suddenly the pilot announces a detour. Or maybe you hear that your flight has been canceled. You're stuck. Your business trip, your vacation, your family reunion, delayed or ruined for something that's happening thousands of feet below you. The ripples from this thing are going to spread everywhere. But let's talk about the actual target. The Command and Monitoring Center for Unmanned Guided Boats at Sheikh Issa Air Base in Bahrain. Some of the reports also mention Jubair. That's where the U.S. 5th Fleet headquarters is, the nerve center. The IRGC said their naval and aerospace forces hit it with a combined missile and drone attack. They didn't just fire one missile and hope for the best. They used a coordinated assault. That's planning. That's skill. Or at least, that's what they want everyone to believe. They also claim they hit Patriot radar, air control radar, CRAM early warning radar. These are the systems that protect the base from the kind of attack they just launched. It's like they kicked the door in and then broke the lock so you couldn't lock it again. It's a shot right across the bow. Now, what's the response going to be? We don't know yet. But we know what President Trump promised. He said he'd hit them hard. And that was before this specific attack. Are we about to see another night of strikes? A larger one? Is this going to spiral into a full-scale conflict? Or is there still a chance to slam on the brakes? The fact that EASA issued this warning, it tells me that the people in the intelligence community, the people who assess risk for a living, think the situation is volatile. They think a plane could get hit. That means they think there's going to be more fighting, more missiles flying. An advisor that nobody's listening to right now. Let me tell you about the other countries involved. Jordan. They said they intercepted 4 Iranian missiles. That means they were targeted. Iran's IRGC statement called on Jordanians to dismantle American bases on their soil. They're trying to turn public opinion against the U.S. presence there. They're trying to make it uncomfortable for the host countries. Divide and conquer. Kuwait. There are reports of attacks on a U.S. logistics center there, on a missile base that caught fire. They activated their air defenses. They were shooting down hostile targets. Oman. Iran claimed they hit long-range surveillance radar systems there too. Iran is basically threatening every country in the neighborhood that hosts U.S. troops, sending a message to the whole region. If you let the Americans use your territory, you're a target. That's not a military strike. That's diplomatic terrorism. That's how you make the Gulf states rethink their alliances. Imagine you're the leader of Qatar or the UAE. You're looking at what's happening in Bahrain a few hundred miles away. You're thinking, is this going to be me? Are Iranian missiles going to fall on my country, on my people, because of American bases? It's a scary thought, and it's exactly what Iran wants. Now, here's where it gets really dark. There was a moment just a short time ago when this was all de-escalating. The fighting had quieted down. The US and Iran had signed that thing in Pakistan. It wasn't a full peace deal, but it was a pause, a chance to breathe. And then the US president declared it void. I'm not saying that was the wrong move. I don't have the intelligence briefings. I don't know what Iran was doing behind the scenes. But I'm telling you what happened. We went from a deal to nothing in a very short period of time. And now people are in shelters in Bahrain, and a major international aviation agency is telling passenger jets to avoid a huge chunk of the world's airspace. The stakes here are enormous. We're talking about the risk of a wider war in the Middle East, a region that's already been through so much, a region that sits on top of a massive chunk of the world's energy supply. If this drags on, if there are more US casualties or Iranian casualties, the pressure for a bigger response will grow. And it won't be confined to just those countries. You'll see Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria, backed by Iran, start firing rockets at US targets. You'll see attacks on shipping in the Red Sea. You'll see the Houthis in Yemen getting involved. It becomes a regional firestorm. You already see some of the political reactions. Bahrain, which is a US ally and hosts the Fifth Fleet, they're accusing Iran of, quote, systematic acts of aggression. Qatar is saying the escalation undermines diplomatic efforts. Saudi Arabia, not directly involved, is condemning Iran. It's all bad. Iran's Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC, they're not the regular military. They're a hardline ideological force loyal to the supreme leader. They believe in the Islamic Revolution. They see America as the quote-unquote great Satan. They love this stuff. This is what they live for, fighting the US. They're not going to back down. They'd rather go out in a blaze of glory than surrender. And if they keep feeling emboldened, if they think their attacks are working, they'll keep going. So what does the United States do? Do they escalate? Do they strike Iranian soil harder? Do they hit the nuclear program? Or do they de-escalate? Do they find a way to back off without looking weak? That's the million-dollar question. The thing that's going to decide whether we're looking at a war or a limited exchange. Because a war with Iran, people don't understand. It's not like Iraq. It's not like Afghanistan. Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq. It's mountainous. It has a powerful military. It has missiles that can reach Israel and Saudi Arabia. It has proxies everywhere. A war with Iran would be devastating. It would cost trillions of dollars. It would cost thousands of lives. It would make the last 20 years look like a picnic. And the US military is already stretched. We have troops in Europe, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. We have a naval presence in the Pacific to counter China. We don't have the bandwidth for a big war in the Middle East, at least not without making huge sacrifices elsewhere. The Pentagon knows that. The commanders know that. So they have to be careful. They have to calibrate their response. They can't just invade Iran. They can't just carpet bomb Tehran. That's not an option. It would be a catastrophe. But they can't do nothing either, because doing nothing after Iran publicly taunted them and claimed to have destroyed U.S. equipment, it looks weak. It emboldens them. It makes U.S. allies wonder if the U.S. still has their back. It's an impossible position. Let me pull back for a second, because I think this is the most important part. The world is watching this. It's not just the U.S. and Iran. It's China. It's Russia. They're watching to see how the United States handles this. They're watching to see if the U.S. is still the global superpower it claims to be, or if it's in decline, unable to protect its interests in a critical region. If the U.S. overreacts and gets bogged down in a war, China and Russia laugh all the way to the bank. They start making moves in their own regions. If the U.S. underreacts, they also laugh, because they see the U.S. as weak, as unwilling to fight. This is the worst kind of pressure, a no-win scenario. So what's the likely outcome? Let me just share my gut feeling based on how these things usually go. We'll probably see more U.S. strikes against Iranian targets in the coming days. The kind of strikes that are precise, that are meant to degrade Iran's capability without actually killing a lot of people. It'll be focused on the Navy, the air defenses, the drone production facilities, things that are directly involved in these attacks. The U.S. will probably also boost its naval presence in the Gulf, send another carrier strike group, make a show of force. This isn't to start a war. It's to send a signal. We're not going anywhere. Iran will continue to claim victories. They'll issue more statements. They'll probably try to hit a U.S. ship or maybe an American base in Iraq. There will be a back and forth, a low-level conflict that simmers for a while. The big question is whether someone makes a mistake. A missile goes astray and hits a crowded market, an Iranian general gets killed, a U.S. sailor is killed. That's when it escalates out of control. That's when the real danger starts. But let's be honest, the real danger is already here. The risk is already high. The market volatility, the airspace closures, the military posturing, all of this is happening right now. It's easy to talk about in the abstract, but I want you to think about the human cost. A person in Bahrain is hearing a siren and running for cover. A soldier in Jordan is standing guard, waiting for a missile to come. A family in the U.S. is looking at their phone, terrified that their son, their husband, their brother is caught in this. This isn't a video game. This isn't a political debate. This is real. People are scared. People are dying. The really sad thing, the really frustrating thing, is that this whole thing could have been avoided. There were paths to de-escalation. There were chances to negotiate. But both sides felt too strong, or too proud, or too scared of looking weak. And now we're here. So what's the lesson? The lesson is that the military option is a trap. It's a response that looks simple. Hit them harder. Show them who's boss. But it's never simple. It leads to escalation. It leads to unintended consequences. And in the end, the people who suffer are the regular people, the ones who had nothing to do with the decisions. The person in the apartment in Bahrain who just wants to live their life. The Iranian mother who just wants to feed her kids. They're the ones paying the price. I don't have an easy answer for you. I wish I did. Some people will say we need to go in there and finish the job. Others will say we need to pull out and let them fight among themselves. But those aren't real solutions. They're just slogans. The reality is much messier. The reality is that there's no clean way out of this, only degrees of bad. The U.S. has to protect its allies. That's a promise. If they abandon Bahrain, if they let the Iranian strikes go unanswered, the whole security architecture in the Gulf collapses. Every country starts thinking they need to cut a deal with Tehran. The U.S. is sidelined. And maybe that's what Iran wants, to be the dominant power in the region. But is that so bad? I mean, is it worth a war? Is it worth sending hundreds of thousands of troops to die for the right to keep a Navy base in a small island nation? It's a complicated question, right? And people in America, they've got their own problems. Inflation, the border, education. They look at the news and say, why are we fighting in Bahrain? It's easy to ask that, and I get it. I totally get it. But there's a flip side. What does America stand for if it doesn't stand with its allies? What happens to the global order if it pulls back from these commitments? These aren't just abstract ideas. They're real forces that shape our world. So we're left with the mess, the uncertainty, the fear, and you're left sitting here watching this video, probably feeling a bit uneasy, maybe a bit scared. That's okay. It's the appropriate reaction. All I can do is walk you through what happened, explain the pieces of the puzzle, and let you make up your own mind. I want to leave you with a final thought. This is still unfolding. The situation is changing by the hour. Even as I speak, there are probably new reports coming out, new threats, new responses. The thing that scares me most isn't any one missile or any one battle. It's how quickly things can get out of hand. It's the speed of the escalation. In just a few days, we went from a fragile ceasefire to this, from a deal to no deal to full-scale strikes. That's terrifying, and it shows us how fragile the peace really is, how thin the line is that separates us from chaos. We like to pretend we live in a civilized world, that the rules apply, that countries are rational. But the truth is, we're always one miscalculation away from disaster, one wrong turn, one overconfident commander. And that's what this is. This is a test of nerves, a test of will. Who's going to blink? Who's going to make the mistake? We don't know yet. And that's the scariest part. Think about that the next time you hear someone talking about defeating Iran or dominating the Middle East. It's not that simple. It's never that simple. It's going to be a long, ugly slog. And we're all going to pay for it, one way or another. Stay informed, okay? Pay attention. Don't just scroll past this stuff. Because what happens in Bahrain doesn't stay in Bahrain. It affects your gas prices, your job, your safety. It affects the whole world. There's going to be a lot more news coming out of the Middle East, and I'll be here to walk you through it, to help you understand what it actually means beneath the headlines. This isn't over. Not even close.